Good evening, brave souls, and welcome back to Untold Fears, where we uncover the raw, unfiltered truths that linger in the shadows of our world. Tonight, we venture into the ancient, mist-shrouded peaks of the Appalachian Mountains, a range older than time itself, where the earth holds secrets that whisper to those who dare to listen. These are not campfire tales or fabricated legends. These are the real, deeply personal accounts of 10 individuals whose lives were forever changed by encounters with the unexplainable in these haunted hills. Each story was shared with us because these brave souls need others to know. Something otherworldly dwells in America's oldest mountains, watching, waiting, and sometimes claiming those who wander too far. If you're new to Untold Fears, please subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay connected to the chilling truths we uncover. Share these stories with those who feel the pull of the wild, and let's honor the courage of those who've faced the unknown. As we begin, let us offer a blessing. May those who walk the trails of the Appalachian Mountains tread with respect, listen with humility, and find strength to return to the light. Let's dive into the heart of these 10 haunting experiences, where the mountains themselves seem to breathe, and some scars never fade. Transition, soft, ominous hum fades into the sound of crunching leaves and distant wind. Our first story comes from Sarah, a seasoned wilderness guide whose love for the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia was tested by a presence that refused to let her go. 6 months ago, she set out on a solo hike, expecting solitude and serenity. Instead, she found herself hunted by something that still follows her in the quiet of the night. I've hiked the Appalachian trails for over 15 years. These mountains are my home, my sanctuary. I'm a certified wilderness guide, navigation, survival, you name it, I've mastered it. But last October, on a remote trail in the Blue Ridge, something found me. I'd chosen a path few hikers ever take, a rugged stretch that sees maybe a dozen souls a month. The first day was perfect, crisp air, vibrant leaves, the kind of peace that makes you feel alive. I set up camp by a stream, cooked dinner, and settled by a small fire. But as night fell, the forest went silent, too silent. No owls, no critters, just this heavy stillness that made every sound I made feel like a scream. I woke up repeatedly that night, not from nightmares, but from the unshakable feeling of being watched. You know that prickle when someone's staring at you? It was like that, but 100 times worse. Saturday morning, I brushed it off as nerves, but things got stranger. At noon, I saw a dark shape dart between trees, too quick to be a bear, too tall to be a deer. An hour later, a figure in dark clothing moved parallel to the trail, just out of sight. I called out, but my voice echoed back unanswered. By afternoon, I reached my second campsite, a clearing I'd used before, surrounded by towering hemlocks. That's when I saw the footprints, fresh boot prints, larger than mine, circling the fire ring as if someone had been studying the space. No trails led away. They just stopped. That night, I didn't light a fire. I ate cold food in my tent, every sense on edge. Around midnight, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling my camp. They paused, then started again, closer each time. I clutched my knife, barely breathing, as the steps came from multiple directions, silent except for their weight on the earth. At dawn, the footprints were gone, replaced by deeper ones, pressed into the ground like something impossibly heavy had stood there. I packed up and ran, determined to hike the 12 miles back to my Jeep. But the trail I knew by heart had changed. Markers vanished, paths forked where they shouldn't, and my GPS showed me standing in a non-existent lake. Panic set in as I realized I was being herded deeper into the wilderness. Then I saw it, A tall, human-shaped figure on a ridge, watching me. Its dark clothing seemed to swallow the light. I waved, shouted, but it didn't move. It just stared. I crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at me, hearing steady footsteps behind, not running, just following, like it knew I couldn't escape. Hours later, I stumbled onto a gravel road and found a house where kind folks called the sheriff. 2 days later, search and rescue found my Jeep, my gear scattered at a campsite I'd never seen, as if someone had been living in it for weeks. I've moved twice since then, but the feeling of being watched never leaves. Sometimes, at night, I smell hemlock and mountain air under my door, and I know something in those mountains still wants me to stay. Sarah's story reminds us that the wilderness can be both a refuge and a trap. May those who walk its paths carry courage and return to tell their tales. Marcus, a genealogy enthusiast, sought to uncover his family's roots in the Daniel Boone National Forest of Kentucky. What he found was a legacy that refused to stay buried, pulling him toward a home he never knew he had. 3 years ago, I was obsessed with tracing my family tree, piecing together lives from old records and faded photos. My great-great-grandmother Abigail Thornton was a mystery, no records before 1890, like she appeared out of nowhere in a Kentucky hollow. A distant cousin, Ezra Caldwell, contacted me through a forum, claiming he knew where her homestead stood, deep in the Daniel Boone National Forest. He offered to guide me, warning the hike was tough and the roads barely passable. I met Ezra in Whitesburg, a wiry man in his 70s with eyes that saw too much. His pickup rattled down crumbling roads as he shared stories of old families, hinting that Abigail's father dealt with problems the church couldn't solve. We hiked for hours down a deer path, the forest growing quieter with every step. No birds, no wind, just silence that swallowed our footsteps. When we reached the clearing, I froze. A 2-story log cabin stood there, looking brand new, not a century old. Fresh chinking, clean windows, a roof untouched by time. Ezra went pale, muttering, "This ain't how it was last time." Inside, the house felt alive, dust barely settled, clothes hung on pegs, smelling of wood smoke. My camera and phone died, and when I turned, Ezra was gone, vanished into the silent forest. Upstairs, I found family photos with faces scratched out, one showing a man who looked like me, dated 1890. Voices whispered below, a man and woman arguing urgently. I crept downstairs, but the room was empty, except for fresh muddy footprints and a trapdoor that hadn't been there before. Against every instinct, I descended into a basement too large for the house, filled with jars of things I didn't dare look at and journals in feminine handwriting. The latest entry, dated 3 days ago, read, "Marcus is the last one. When he arrives, it will be finished." My name, in a century-old journal. The trapdoor slammed shut, and voices, my grandfather, my great-uncle, a woman, called me to come home. I clawed through the basement wall with my keys, emerging behind a now dilapidated cabin. I ran, finding Ezra's truck with keys waiting, as if he'd planned it. The sheriff later told me Ezra went missing in 1987, his truck found in a ravine. I burned my genealogy notes and moved across the country, but I still hear her voice, calling me back to that hollow where my family waits. Some histories are meant to stay buried. Narrator, Marcus's tale teaches us that some roots run deeper than we can fathom. May we honor our ancestors by respecting their silence and finding peace in letting go. Transition, echoing whispers fade into wind. David, a veteran mountain climber, felt a spiritual bond with the peaks of Grandfather Mountain in North Carolina. Last spring, a voice from beyond called him to a summit that exists outside our world. I've climbed mountains for 23 years, from local crags to Denali. The Appalachians, though, are my soul's home, ancient, alive, whispering secrets. Last May, I planned a routine climb on Grandfather Mountain's north face, a technical route I'd done dozens of times. The hike up was normal, but at the summit, I heard my name, spoken clearly, like a conversation, by a woman's voice like my Cherokee grandmother's, gone 15 years. "David, come here," it said, coming from an unmapped ridge I'd never noticed. I followed, against my instincts, rigging my gear to descend a path that felt too perfect, too traveled. The voice grew clearer, "You're almost home." The valley below looked ancient, untouched by roads or towns. My GPS showed impossible heights, my compass spun wildly, and the air thickened. On a rocky outcrop stood my grandmother, ageless, her hair moving in a wind I couldn't feel. She beckoned me toward a peak that stretched into clouds that shouldn't exist. Other climbers appeared, wearing gear from decades past, their faces serene but empty, climbing endlessly upward. She spoke in my mind, "This is the eternal mountain, between the living and the ancestors." I realized I wasn't on Grandfather Mountain anymore. The climbers were trapped in a timeless ascent, and I was being called to join them. I activated my emergency beacon, and her scream shook the peak. Shadowy climbers chased me as I rappelled down, their forms fading like mist. I landed in an unfamiliar valley, 12 miles from my car, found by rescue after 7 unaccounted hours. Tests showed I was fine, but I hear the mountains calling my name, promising a summit I can't resist forever. David's journey shows us the mountain's timeless pull. May climbers find strength to return from the heights and cherish the earth beneath their feet. Jake Morrison, a third-generation trucker, thought he knew every road in the Appalachians. But one night on Route 19 in West Virginia, he took a shortcut that led him to a family reunion he was never meant to attend. Ambient sound, truck engine rumbling, static-filled CB radio. For 20 years, I've driven these mountain roads, hauling freight like my father and grandfather before me. I know every curve, every shortcut. But 3 months ago, my GPS suggested Route 19 Alt, a road I'd never seen, promising to save 42 miles to Columbus. My paper atlas showed nothing but wilderness, but I took the turn. The road was perfect, freshly paved, no traffic. Too perfect. Old mining equipment littered the sides, mixed with new machines, like time had collapsed. My CB crackled with voices from the 1950s, talking about Morrison's crew trapped in a cave-in. My name, Jake Morrison, but I'm no miner. Mile markers counted down, not up, leading to a valley with an impossible mining operation, lights blazing, workers moving. The road ended in a lot filled with trucks from every era, and miners approached, some wearing my family's faces, my father, grandfather, even me. "You're late for your shift, Jake," my doppelganger said. They wanted me to join an eternal mining crew, trapped in a loop across decades. I lit emergency flares, their red light breaking the spell. My truck roared to life, and I sped back to Interstate 77, losing 4 hours. Now, Route 19 Alt appears on every GPS, and truckers talk about it. Some never return. At night, I hear them on the CB, "Jake, your shift's waiting. The mountains don't forget their workers." Jake's escape reminds us to trust our instincts on unknown roads. May travelers find safe paths and the wisdom to avoid shortcuts that lead nowhere. Tom Bradley has maintained trails on the Appalachian Trail for 15 years, believing he knew every path. Last October, he learned some trails answer to forces older than humanity. I've kept a 20-mile stretch of the Appalachian Trail in Virginia pristine since 2009. After a storm last October, I expected chaos, fallen trees, washed-out bridges. Instead, my section was perfect, blazes fresh, bridges new, paths clear. No one else was assigned, yet the work was done. At a repair site, I found vintage tools arranged with precision, untouched by age. The forest was silent, no birds, no wind. New blazes led to unmapped trails, and footprints appeared, then vanished mid-stride. At night, I heard chopping and scraping, like a crew working, but found nothing. My tools were rearranged beside my tent, a message I couldn't ignore. On the second day, a figure appeared, tall, bark-like skin, eyes like forest shadows. "These trails are older than your species," it said. "You walk where we allow." It challenged me to maintain its trails for 3 days, proving my respect. I followed blazes to impossible canyons and ancient forests, watched by the entity. On the third night, it allowed me to continue my work, but only with the mountain's permission. Now, I ask the forest's blessing before I work. Sometimes, repairs happen overnight when the mountains approve. The trails belong to something ancient, and I'm just a guest. Tom's story teaches us to honor the wilderness with humility. May trailblazers walk with respect, guided by forces greater than themselves. Chris Morgan took a summer job as a fire lookout in Pisgah National Forest, expecting solitude. Instead, he found a tower that watches more than fires, existing in a place between realities. Ambient sound, radio static, distant thunder. At 21, I needed a job to pay for college. A fire lookout position in Pisgah National Forest seemed perfect: good pay, isolation, time to study. Tower 47 was a 4-hour hike, a 1940s structure supposedly decommissioned in 1987. But inside, I found a previous lookout's belongings, clothes, food, a logbook with eerie entries about strange lights. The radio picked up voices from other towers, long demolished, reporting unnatural fires and watchers in the forest. On day 10, I found a hidden room with surveillance equipment and photos of tall, thin beings watching the tower. One showed me sleeping, a figure looming over me. A voice on the radio said, "We've been watching you watchers." A non-human entity appeared, its joints bending wrong, eyes reflecting like a cat's. It said the tower monitored dimensional boundaries, and past lookouts stayed forever. I activated my emergency beacon, but rescue couldn't find the tower, it didn't exist in their reality. During a storm, lightning grounded the tower, and I rappelled down, escaping as it faded. The Forest Service has no record of my job, but I hear past lookouts on my radio, watching worlds I left behind. Chris's escape reminds us some duties are too vast for one soul. May we find peace in choosing our own reality and strength to walk away. Rebecca Martinez, a professional spelunker, sought an unmapped cave in Kentucky's Daniel Boone National Forest. What she found was a chamber where the lost are never truly gone. For 12 years, I explored caves, drawn to their untouched beauty. 6 months ago, a local named Jimmy Caldwell told me about an unmapped cave behind a waterfall in Bent Creek Ridge. I waited for the water to drop, then entered alone, against every rule. The first chamber was vast, silent, with human and animal bones arranged in patterns. Voices called my name, my sister Maria, dead 3 years, my advisor, Dr. Peterson, my grandmother, all urging me deeper. I descended into a glowing chamber, the size of a stadium, filled with people from different eras, some not human. Maria welcomed me, saying the cave collected explorers across millennia. I wanted to stay, to join them, but my emergency beacon reminded me of the surface. I followed my rope, but the cave shifted, trapping me in new passages. After days, I emerged miles from the entrance, in a valley that shouldn't exist. The cave isn't on any map, and Jimmy's gone. I quit caving, but I hear Maria's voice from every dark place, calling me home. Rebecca's story warns us of the depths' allure. May explorers find the light above and the courage to leave the darkness behind. Lisa Hartwell, a search and rescue volunteer, thought she knew how to find the lost. In Pisgah National Forest, she discovered some are taken for purposes beyond rescue. For 8 years, I searched for missing hikers in the Appalachians, inspired by my brother's rescue. Last September, we looked for David and Karen Morrison, experienced hikers gone missing in Pisgah. Their trail vanished at mile 12, no tracks, no scent. I saw cameras on trees, invisible to my team, watching us. Their campsite was too perfect, staged, like a display. The dogs refused to approach. At night, I heard Karen's voice, "We're trapped. The cameras watch." Following it, I found an impossible valley with a real campsite, and mannequins wearing the Morrisons' clothes, speaking with their voices. They said the Morrisons were being studied for human behavior data. I ran, the forest shifting, cameras tracking me. My team believed the mannequins were the Morrisons, closing the case. I resigned, but I know they're still out there, watched by something that collects hikers like specimens. Lisa's tale shows us the limits of rescue. May those who search find strength to accept what cannot be saved and peace in their efforts. Dr. Sarah Chen, a wildlife biologist, studied bears in the Great Smoky Mountains. She uncovered a preserve that collects more than animals, and it wanted her expertise. For 8 years, I tracked Appalachian wildlife, focusing on black bears. 3 months ago, I studied an isolated area of the Smokies, dropped off by helicopter. I found tracks too large for any known species, bears, cats, birds, all impossible. My cameras caught animals moving with unnatural intelligence, aware of the lenses. My GPS showed contradictory locations, and my radio failed. Following a trail, I found a valley with a facility, a preserve holding extinct creatures and missing people, including hikers and researchers, moving like choreographed specimens. Figures in ranger uniforms, not quite human, watched them. One called my name, thanking me for my research, saying I was ideal for their collection. I ran, following a stream to a ranger station. My grant and equipment vanished from records. I teach now, far from wilderness, but I know they're still watching, collecting rare specimens like me. Sarah's discovery reminds us we're not always the observers. May researchers seek truth with caution and find safety in their pursuit. Emily and her husband Jake booked a dream cabin in the Smokies for their anniversary. They found a place that traps its guests, refusing to let them leave. For our 5th anniversary, Jake and I booked a luxury cabin in the Smokies, too cheap to be real. The website had no reviews, no contact, but the photos were stunning. We drove deep into the mountains, finding the cabin glowing in the dusk, smoke curling from the chimney. It was perfect, but too silent, no birds, no wind. Inside, food we didn't request, clothes in our sizes, and no cell signal awaited us. At night, I saw flickering lights in the forest, like candles moving. A guestbook appeared, filled with entries growing frantic, warning not to stay past checkout. A basement held photos of couples, including us, dated before our arrival. Jake grew distant, his eyes vacant, drawn to voices outside calling us to join them. I burned the guestbook pages with our names, snapping Jake back. The cabin shook as we fled, the car starting just in time. The website's gone, but we feel the cabin's pull, whispering we belong there. Emily's escape shows us the power of love and will. May travelers find havens that nurture, not trap, and return to those who wait. These 10 stories weave a tapestry of awe and terror, revealing the Appalachian Mountains as a place where the veil between worlds is thin. Sarah, Marcus, David, Jake, Tom, Chris, Rebecca, Lisa, Sarah, and Emily faced the unknown and returned to share their truths, a testament to human resilience. The mountains are alive with forces older than us, watching, guiding, sometimes claiming. Yet, in their mystery lies a profound lesson: to walk with respect, to listen with humility, and to cherish the light of home. Closing blessing: may all who venture into the wild carry courage in their hearts, wisdom in their steps, and the strength to return to the warmth of loved ones. May the mountains teach us to honor their secrets, to tread lightly on their ancient paths, and to find peace in the balance between exploration and survival. Subscribe to Untold Fears for more true tales of the unknown, and share these stories to remind others that the wilderness is both a teacher and a mystery. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and always listen to the whispers of the wild.